cell coverage can be based on signal coverage or on the traffic coverage. So these are two primary factors that will determine the cell coverage. What should be the optimum cell coverage? If you transmit a signal at a power which is very high, maybe the signal will cross the boundaries of the cell or the edges of the cell. So there is no need to transmit the signal at a very high very high, what we call ERP, immediate radiated power. You don't need to transmit at such a high power also, because it will might go and have the interference with the signal transmission going on in the adjacent cells. So signal coverage can be predicted by a coverage prediction model, what we call CPMs. And there are two coverage prediction model, one defined for the flat terrain, what we call city roads or the village roads, which are by and large very flat. And the other is the mountainous terrain, which is always a challenge. Now, what is the optimum task of a cellular service provider? He is a businessman, so he will recruit the engineers. So it's a duty of the engineers to make sure that they're able to cover whole of the area of the cell with the minimum number of cell sites. Because internet service provider, cellular service provider, cloud service provider, they are the industrialist. So they will recruit best of the professionals who would be the managers as well as the engineers. Now, what is the duty of these engineers? They will do the actual thing for the owner, for the businessman. So they should be try to develop the algorithms in such a manner that they should be able to cover whole of the area of the cell with the minimum number of cell sites. And this is easier said than done. It is always a challenge for the engineers. And we always believe that since 100% cell coverage area is not possible, there would be certain portions of the cell which may not receive the best quality signal. The cell site must be engineered in such a manner so that the holes are located in no traffic locations. So holes might occur, they may not occur. So probability varies from cell to cell. But yes, if at all they occur, then at least they should fall in a terrain where subscribers are not getting affected. So either they do residential area, then it is fine. There's no commercial area, then it is fine. There could be a small ridge, just say for example in Delhi, or it could be the river belt, like Yamuna river belt is there. So holes may fall, but they should always preferably fall in a region where subscriber is not getting affected, because he's paying, he's a king, so he wants the best cellular services. So holes are acceptable, but every cellular service provider should make sure that the holes are located in the no traffic location. And this is again easier said than done. These are all the challenges which every engineer has to face who makes a career in the telecommunication field. Now, for efficient cell coverage, falling factor need to be considered. There could be many. I have seen in the literature many factors are there, but then we can't discuss all of them. First is cellular service providers need to determine that what is the natural topology of a cell. So natural terrain in the cell need to be determined before the cellular services are provided. So whether it's a flat terrain in a cell or it is a hilly terrain in a cell, they need to determine first. And even if the mountains are there, what is the elevation of the mountain from the earth? So that also need to be determined. Then is there any water bodies like lakes, ponds, rivers, etc. within the cell? Then what is the natural vegetation? For example, the forest and the foliage. Foliage means there are certain trees on which if the signal falls, they absorb the signal. And we want a trees which should be best reflector of the signal. So if there is a region in a cell which is densely, there are a large number of the trees, then they will just absorb whenever the signal falls on them from the cell site or from the cell tower. They are just going to absorb the signals. So they're not going to reflect back. And what we want the ideal trees. For example, oak is one of them, pine is another, which are good reflector of the signals. So cellular service providers advises uh, people that you should plant such kind of tree in a cell so that they can be act as a reflector and the signal does not go as a waste. They are reflected back again. They can be received by the antennas of the handset used by the subscribers. Then if the human made structures are there in a cell, then the cellular service provider will have to look into that. So this is another important factor. What is there any open area? For example, if you look at the golf area, they are huge. So population density is very less. So, but the area covered by the golf range is very large. It's a vast area as such. And what is the congestion level, population density in a particular cell, especially in the urban and semi-urban areas? Because if more the population density, then we need to come up with the cell sites, and we also need to go for cell splitting, which we discussed earlier, permanent splitting or the dynamic splitting. Permanent splitting, if there is, for example, a residential area, if the owner or the landlord has actually purchased a flat, then he will going to live there. But so permanent splitting is the only option. But however, certain matches are going there, like for example, in Delhi we have got trade fair for 14 days, or the certain exhibitions that goes on. So for temporary duration of time, ranging from 2 to 4 days, maximum to a week, we can go for dynamic splitting, and we can have the temporary boosters also, even dynamic cell sites also. Now we have seen the vehicle mounted cell sites. Cell sites are there on the trucks or on the vehicles, and they can be made to park at closer to the stadium where the matches are being played. So the dynamic splitting can easily do the job for us. But yes, if the congestion is very high, population density of a, let's say, shopping complex, like for example Nehru Place and Rajendra Place in Delhi, they're always densely populated during the daytime. So they need to come up with the proper cell sites or go for a permanent splitting of a cell, so that the customer can always enjoy the best quality services. Now let's look for the diagram which we discussed, ground incident angle and ground elevation angle, how to compute the theta and the phi. So it's a sketch in a flat terrain. It's also given in the CY Lee book. I've taken it from there only. So here we believe that a cell tower or a cell site is there, and it is mounted on the top of a building. So right at the top, the cell site is there. And now what we are concerned, if the pedestrian is there, we are not worried too much about him. But if the person is moving on a vehicle, then that's a challenge for the cellular service provider. So I've been repeatedly saying it multiple number of times. Even for a handoff mechanism, the pedestrian is not a challenge for us, because he will move at a very slow speed, and we can always take into account in which direction he is moving, so that we can alert the cell tower or the cell site of the adjacent cell where actually he is moving slowly. So pedestrian will always move slowly. So all the base station, my source base station, can always send a SOS message or the alert message to the base station where the pedestrian is moving. Even if the person is moving on a cycle, bicycle, no problem is there. If the person is moving on a two-wheeler, problem is there, but then it can still be managed. But if the person is moving on a fast speed vehicle, then SUVs or sedan, then yes, we have a challenge that we want to track in which direction he is about to go. For example, if the roads are straight, then we know that he is going to move from this particular cell to this particular cell. But in a city, there are so many traffic lights, left, right turns are there. Then it is very difficult to know that what will the next turn he will take. For a highway, it's very much defined. Highway, the roads are in a fixed directions, so we know that the direction in which the vehicle will be going to move for the next duration of time, next interval of time. But in a case of a city, so many traffic lights are there, so many left and right turns are there, so we're really not sure whether in which direction is going to move, whether in the next traffic light will take a left turn or a right turn, or will take a U-turn and come back to the source base station. So here we take a this is the H1, the height from the earth. Then we have a vehicle, and the vehicle is moving towards a base station. Now the vehicle will receive a signal which will be reflected back from the earth's surface. So if the driver or the pillion and the other people are sitting within a vehicle, they have the antennas, they have a handsets. So all of them will receive a signal which is reflected back from the earth's surface. Now certain signal, we know. Now these are the two angles we are going to compute: the theta, the incident angle, and phi is the elevation angle. So theta we have already seen, a ray of light coming right from the source base station, heading to the earth surface and then reflected back to the mobile antenna. certain signal will be going into the earth and they will again might be reflected back. Now also certain signal will come right from the base station and they will interact or meet with the signal which is getting reflected back from the earth surface. Now that we see as a phi dash, the that angle that which is actually getting created or made. Now the vehicle may also receive direct wave also from the base station. So the antenna, mobile antenna of the subscriber will receiving multiple kind of a signal. One, the ones which are getting reflected back from the earth surface, one which are receiving a direct wave from the base station. So in that case, we make the angle that is created is called phi, which is the elevation angle. So we have got two kind of the elevation angle now. One at the location of the mobile unit, means where the vehicle is located, that is phi dash, and one at the antenna of the mobile unit, means the handset which the subscriber is holding within his hand and sitting in a car, maybe driving or maybe a pillion rider, maybe the other passenger sitting in a car. So the angle made with the direct wave is called as the elevation angle, and at the antenna of the mobile unit. And phi dash is a elevation angle at the location of the mobile unit. So location is the car, the vehicle, where exactly in which direction is moving. And this is what we call H2. So one is the H1 and the other is the H2. So one is a reflected wave and one is a direct wave. So two kind of waves it will be received. And we have got a communication path length which is actually right from the building, the base station where it is mounted, because most of the base stations are mounted on the top of the rooftop of the buildings, the tall buildings. So it's a D starting from the place where the building is located to the place where vehicle is located. That's a communication path length called as a D. So if we are able to gather this diagram and if we are able to understand this diagram, then we can do a numerical based on this computation, that how to compute the incident angle, how to compute the elevation angle at 2 points, one at the location of mobile unit and one at the antenna of the mobile unit. So let's take a sample case study, a small numerical. In a mobile radio environment, the average cell site antenna height is about 50 meters. So they are talking of the H1, the average cell site antenna height. Then the mobile antenna height is about 3 meters. So what is being given is H1 and H2. H1 is 50 meters and H2 is 3 meters. And the communication path length is 5 kilometers. So we'll convert into a meters, 5000 meters. Now what we are being asked to compute, first is the incident angle. And what is the incident angle? It is the angle of the wave arrival incidentally pointing to the ground. That we have already seen in the slide, the theta. That is what we are referring to. And the other is the elevation angle at 2 points. One at the place where vehicle is located, what we call location of the mobile unit. And the second is the antenna of the mobile unit. So we will incident angle is denoted by theta and the elevation angle by phi. So how do we compute it? There are predefined formulas for it. What we need to do, we need to remember them, because if you forget it, then you won't be able to compute, and you would not be able to compute the incident angle and the elevation angle. But formulas are simple. So for example, if I want to compute the incident angle, we say theta is equal to tan inverse h1 plus h2 by d. Now what is the h1 here? The average cell site antenna height, which is given as 50 meters, and it will always be given. Then mobile antenna height is given as 3 meter. If at all these values are not given, please assume them, because there could be numericals where they skip these values assuming you know default values. So take them as a 3 meters, 550 meters, and the communication path length will always be given, whether it's 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer or 3 kilometer, 4, 5, it depends particular cell. So if I want to compute the incident angle theta, I say theta is equal to tan inverse h1 plus h2 by d. Now h1 is 50, h2 is 3, so 50 plus 3, 53 divided by d, which is communication path length, 5 kilometers. That is converted into meter, 5,000 meters. So it's something like this. Theta is equal to tan inverse h1 plus h2 by d. And this will give us a value of theta which comes out to be 0.61 degrees. So this is our incident angle. Now we only need to remember the formulas. Values will be given. If they are not given, please assume a default value both for antenna, average cell site antenna height, as well as the mobile antenna height. Now further going ahead, we need to compute two more things. What are they? We'll take it later on. Let's go through it. So incident angle we have computed. Now we need to compute the elevation angle. Now elevation angle again are two things. We have once at the location of mobile unit and one at the antenna of the mobile unit. So one is phi and the other is phi dash. So we compute the elevation angle at the antenna of the mobile unit. And again we need to remember the formula phi is equal to tan inverse h1 minus h2 by d. So again 50 minus 347 meters divided by 5,000 meters. Compute the tan inverse of it and it will give you the value of phi as 0.54 degrees. So you can have the calculators and you can easily do a computation. Calculators anyway allowed in the subject during the exam time, so should not be a problem at all while computing the required values. What we need to do is only to remember the formulas. So that will make it easier to do the right computation and get the right value for the incident angle and the reflect elevation angle. Now this we have computed is a phi, which is at the antenna of the mobile unit. Now what we need to compute next is the phi at the location of the mobile unit. So that is phi dash, and we say phi dash is equal to tan inverse by d. So we skip the value of the height of the mobile antenna. We only take into account the average cell site antenna height and place it in a numerator, and the denominator is 5 kilometers is communication path length, and we get the value of phi dash as 0.57 degree. So this is a way how we compute the elevation angle at the location of mobile unit at the antenna of the mobile unit. So again we need to remember only the formulas and that will do the job for us. Fine. So we move ahead, and now the next case study that talks is what if the customer or the subscriber is actually driving up the mountain. So in the previous graphical slide we have seen he was moving on a flat terrain, on a city road or on the village road. That's both of them by and large flat, but city roads are much more better because the government spend a huge amount of the money in maintenance of the cities as compared to the village scenario. But flat terrain exists both in the cities as well as the rural areas. But what if the customer is moving up the hill? Now that will be our second case study, what we call prediction models. So let's study this coordinate sketch in a hilly terrain. Now here we have seen that the base station is mounted on a top of the mountain, right? Now this base station can't be mounted on the tip of the mountain, that is for sure. So somewhere down the tip, the base station will be mounted. That is why if you see this red color line which is indicating a base station, it is not mounted here. It cannot be, because if for construction you require, for the setting up of it, you require a bit of the flat terrain. I don't say flat terrain, but a settled terrain. So this can only become if you move down the hill and somewhere, yes, it can be mounted. So we have the base station here, and we have got the now two heights are there. One is the height from the earth surface, what we call H, which is average cell site antenna height. H, capital H is equal to 100 meter, and the another is a height from the mountain to the top of the base station. That is given as a H1, which is in this case is 50 meters. Now these are the default values which have been taken into account. So in a numerical, if suppose the values are not given, it is assumed that you are going to take a default values and you are going to compute the incident and the elevation angle using these values. So now we have a vehicle that is going up the hill, that is moving up the hill. So again, as in the previous example, the waves or the signal will come from the base station. It will hit at the mountain and reflected back to the vehicle. So it will receive a reflected wave, and the other will be a direct wave which it will be receiving from the base station. So just like in the previous example, here also the customer or subscriber who's driving a car, or just passenger who are sitting in a car, if they're having a handset or and they will receive a signal. So the antenna of the handset will receive again two signals, one direct wave and the other the reflected wave. Now we need to again compute the angles. So again we will have two angles, incident angle, and here we will have the slope angle, which we depict by the alpha. So instead of elevation angle, we'll compute the slope angle when the vehicle is moving up the hill. So instead of elevation angle, we'll compute the slope angle, the alpha. So this is our theta, the incident angle, which was there in the previous example also, when the vehicle was moving on a flat terrain. And we'll also compute the alpha, the slope angle. Now what point it will be there, we will see how much distance the vehicle has traveled on a mountain. So this red color dashed bar indicate that how much distance it has traveled up the hill. So here it has traveled, let's say 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters, some distance it would have traveled when the vehicle is moving up the mountain. So at that point where the vehicle is located, we compute the slope angle, the alpha. And then as usual, we'll have the communication path length. This is H2, just like we had got the H and the H1 and the H2. We'll have the communication path length D dash 5 kilometers, which will be again a distance from the point where the base station is mounted to the end of the mountain, to the tip of the edge of the mountain. And then we'll have another communication path length D, which is actually from the base station to the location of the vehicle, to the location of the mobile unit. So again, in this kind of the examples of the case study, only two things we need to compute. So again, we need to remember the formulas for it, and then we can compute the theta, the incident angle, and the alpha, the slope angle. Now, if the exams are objective, then it is fine. We don't need to remember we don't need to draw these diagrams. But if the exams are subjective, then yes, we need to draw these diagrams when a numerical is given showing the case study. So before that, it's always advisable that you do it on a piece of paper on your own. This is how the example will look like. This is how it will work. Now let's take a same numerical based on it. In a mobile radio environment, the average cell site antenna height about 50 meters. The mobile antenna height is about 3 meters. The communication path length is 5 kilometers and H is equal to 100 meters. So everything is given. H1 is given 50 meters, H2 is given 3 meters, H is given as 100 meters, and the D, the communication path length, is given as 5 kilometers or 5,000 meters. And we need to compute as usual two things, the incident angle and the slope angle, theta and the alpha. So the incident angle we all know, just like in the previous example we have discussed, theta is equal to tan inverse H1 plus H2 by D. So 50 meters plus 3 meters divided by 5,000 meter, and we get the same answer almost as 0.61 degree. Now what we need to compute next is the slope angle, the alpha. So slope angle is equal to alpha is equal to tan inverse. Now in the previous slide, the H was given, capital H, and was given as 100 meters. So in the numerator we take 100 meter, and in the denominator we only go for the communication path length, which is 5 kilometers. Now there is no derivations for it, that how they have computed. Maybe if you dig the literature, even we'll come to know about the derivation of it, but then it is not required. I don't think so everyone of need to go into that much detail. Only those who actually want to do something, go ahead in the telecommunication world, that only they need to take up the derivation and the theorems for it. Otherwise, remembering the formula and remembering the case studies are good enough. That how they're being getting plotted, how the diagrams are being getting made, which is in synchronous or in consonance with the given case study. You need to draw the neat and clean diagram showing what is happening, whether vehicle is moving on a flat terrain or the vehicle is moving up the hill, and how are the incident angle, elevation angle are being getting computed, or the slope angle are being getting computed. So when a vehicle is moving on a flat terrain, we are focused more on the incident angle and the elevation angle. However, when the vehicle is moving up the hill, we are only concerned regarding the incident angle and the slope angle. So remembering the formulas are good enough. Place the values, compute it, and get the required values for incident angle and the elevation angle. Now what numerical says, let the distance between the two fixed base station is 30 kilometers. And that's a huge. In reality, it will not be that far away. But this is the hypothetical example which has been taken. Let the distance between the two fixed base stations be 30 kilometers and the effective antenna height at one end, H1, is 150 meter above the sea level. So what they have given is a distance D, they have given the H1 150 meter, and the lambda has been given as 0.35 meter, the wavelength. And what we are asked to do is to determine the value of H2, which is a mobile antenna height. At the other end, where the other end means where the mobile is located, when the transmission is going on at a 850 megahertz, and we know there are two bands for the AMP system, 824 to 849 megahertz and 869 to 894 megahertz. So 50 megahertz spectrum or bandwidth is there, that is used by the AMP system for carrying out the computation. So to arrive at a solution, we need to use a formula which we have not discussed till now, and the formula is 4 pi h1 dash h into h2 dash divided by lambda d, which should be less than pi by 3. So again here, no long-term derivation has been done. Directly the application of formula is being there. So 4 pi into h1 dash into h2 dash. In denominator we got lambda d, wavelength and distance, less than pi by 3. Or we can say, because pi is there on both the side, can be cancelled. And if I only want to compute the h2 dash, I will say h2 dash pi, if I cross multiplication, pi into lambda d, then 3 into 4, 12 pi, and pi will cancel, and then the so 12 h1 dash, right? So we'll have h2 dash less than or equal to wavelength into distance lambda d, and 3 into 4, 12 times of h1 dash, and this will, and we can compute the h2 dash with the help of it. And here in our numerical, wavelength has been given to us, distance has been given to us, h1 dash has been given to us. So we can determine the value of the h2 dash, which is a mobile antenna height. So we say h2 dash is equal to 0.35, and it is given as 30 kilometers. The distance between the two fixed base stations is given as 30 kilometers. So 30 into 1000 to make it in a meters, and 12 into 150. The values have already been given to us. So h1 is given to us, lambda is given to us, distance is given to us. So we can only, d is given to us. So we can directly apply all the relevant values in the formula to get the value of the h2 dash, which comes out to be 6 meters. Whereas if you remember the flat terrain and the hilly terrain, we have always taken into account the value of h2 as 3 meters. But here the value of the h2 comes out to be 6 meters. So even if some of the values are skipped, so you assume the default value and then you try to solve the numerical. For example, communication path length is missing. Assume it to be to 5 kilometer. If the value of H1 is missing, assume it to 50 meters. If the value of the H2 is missing, assume it to be the 3 meters. So just remember the default value. Otherwise, so I don't think so you should face any problem. You just need to remember the appropriate formulas. For example, if they talk of the wavelength and they talk of the computation of H2, you need to apply these formulas. If they ask you to calculate the incident angle, the elevation angle, or the slope angle, apply the appropriate formulas. It's simple. The only thing we need to remember in so that we can write it and apply the values and get the required result. So that talks of the that concludes about the prediction models both in the flat terrain and the hilly terrain. Now the next topic that we discuss in the AMP system is free space propagation model. Now free space itself indicates that the signals are being getting propagated in the open air, in the open environment as such. And once the signals will be propagated in the open air, there will be certain issues. Like we'll have the dispersion of the waves, the reflection of the waves, the scattering of the waves. So when we talk about the free space propagation model, we discuss these relevant things. Just a moment. So in the free space propagation model, let's discuss about it. The free space propagation model is used to predict the received signal strength. Now received signal strength is what we say the RSSI, received signal strength indicators. So what is the quality of the signal you are receiving from your nearest base stations? So that vertical lines indicate the received signal strength at my handset or mobile unit. When the transmitter and receiver have a clear, unobstructed line of sight path between them. Line of sight transmission, I hope we have studied, even if we have not. Line of sight itself is a very simple term. When you can see somebody having eye to eye contact, or you can directly have a single seamless communication between the two entities. So this propagation model terms and the entire concept is more related to the communication systems rather than the cellular telephony. So those of you would have studied the communication system by Tomasi and other authors, because most of the terms and most of the theory is from communication system rather than pure cellular telephony. Now, what could be the probable example for it? For example, satellite communication systems and the microwave line of sight radio links. Typically, all of them undergo the free space propagation. So, propagation of a signal in a free space environment. That is what we are referring to free space propagation model. Now, in a free space propagation model, if I'm asked to compute the Fraunhofer distance, uh, so considering a free space propagation, find the Fraunhofer distance for an antenna with a maximum dimension of 1 meter and the operating frequency of 900 megahertz. Now 900 megahertz is a frequency spectrum which is between the AMP system and the GSM system, the global system for mobile communication. So it is in between these two mechanisms or structures. So what we do, we first of all compute the wavelength. Wavelength is equal to C by F, and C we all know 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second, the speed of light, divided by the frequency, which is 900 megahertz. So 900 into 10 to the power 6, and this will give us a wavelength, the lambda, and we can use it in the computation of Fraunhofer distance in the free space propagation. And the Fraunhofer distance is given by a symbol df, and is computed as 2d square by lambda. So maximum dimension has been given as 1 meter. So it's 2 into 1 whole square divided by 0.33, which is the wavelength. And we get the Fraunhofer distance as 6 meter. Now there is a whole lot of theory also in this free space propagation model. I have cut it down because the subject will become more of a communication system subject based. So I've picked up what is relevant from the cellular telephony point of view. So one thing which I found very good for the free space propagation was if the base station is being given to you, dimension of the base station is being given to you, and they need to compute this distance. So we need that distance is called the Fraunhofer distance in a free space propagation model. We do not use it in a pure flat terrain or a mobile terrain environment. Fraunhofer distance is always computed only in the free space propagation environment, and this gives us a distance as a 6 meter. So again, we need to remember the formulas. No need to go for the derivation part of it, that how they are doing it. We need to have remember the formula, and then we can apply the values to get the required result. Now, some of the basic propagation mechanism that was we were discussing in the free space propagation are reflection, diffraction, and the scattering. Now, the terms are closely related to each other, and they all talk of the propagation mechanism and even the wave dispersions. They are the basic three propagation mechanisms which impact the propagation in a mobile communication systems. Now let's look at the first one, the reflection. Reflection occurs when a propagating electromagnetic wave hits or impinges upon an object which has very large dimension when compared to the lambda of the propagating wave or the wavelength of the propagating wave. So if you look at that term, it gives a clear cut meaning what the reflection is. When it will occur? When the electromagnetic wave will hit or impinges upon an object which is very large dimensions. Now what could be the probable example for it? Like the reflection usually occur from the surface of the earth and from buildings in the wall. They are the two best examples to understand where the reflection takes place. When the beam of light or a ray of light hits and it is reflected back. Just like we have seen the case study for the flat terrain also, where the reflection of the wave has taken from the earth's surface, or maybe it could be from building or the walls. And there's also called foliage loss in the communication systems, where we say even the trees reflect back or they can absorb the signal. So most of the trees absorb the leaves, the branches, the trunk, and the of the trees absorb the signal, and there are very few trees which actually reflect back the signal. So from the communication system point of view, from the cellular telephony point of view, we require the trees to be good reflectors so that our signal does not go wasted. And the other term widely used is diffraction. Now when will the diffraction occur? It will occur when the radio path between the transmitter and the receiver is obstructed by a surface. Now what is that surface? We say the surface has a sharp irregularities. It's not a uniform, symmetric, consistent surface. It's a surface which has got a irregular edges. So it's not a pure quadrilateral or a polygon or a triangle or a square. It is a surface which has got very irregular, high degree of the sharp irregularities. And the secondary waves resulting from the obstructing surface are present throughout the space. So once it has hit, the secondary waves are emitted or reflected back. So secondary waves resulting from the obstructing surface are present throughout the open air in the entire atmosphere and even behind the obstacle, giving rise to a bending of waves around the obstacle where it has hit, and even when the light of sight path does not exist between the transmitter and the receiver. Anyway, the last line is irrelevant because we'll always assume the line of sight path is not existing between the transmitter and the receiver. If they would have been existing, then the reflection, diffraction, the scattering would not have even taken place. Direct seamless communication would have happened between the transmitter and the receiver in the line of sight transmission, and no obstruction in between. Then the last term which we talk of in a free space propagation model is scattering. And scattering usually occur when the medium through which the wave travel consists of the object with the dimensions that are small, and small compared to what? Compared to the wavelength, and where the number of obstacle per unit volume is comparatively large. We don't say very large, but it is on the larger side. So then this will result in the scattering of waves in the atmosphere. Now the prominent example could be like the foliage, what we talk of the vegetation, the trees, the forest, they all come in the foliage part, the flora. Then street signs, which we can see the advertising boards then the lamp post, they all induce the scattering in the mobile communication system, because they will all either absorb the signal or just result in the scattering of the signal. They will never be able to reflect back the signal in the atmosphere. So scattering also result in the loss of the signal. So what we require, this advertising board should have a surface which can act as a reflector rather than resulting in the scattering of the signal, because that results in the loss of the signal. So nowadays we can see the good quality advertising signboard that have come up on the highways, like the LED based systems, and nowadays system has got advanced. So we are talking of the earlier part of the AMP system, somewhere in the early 90s, where there was a lot of problem in the quality of the signal transmission, and they studied and sorted many things that can also result in the good reception of the signal at the mobile antenna. Now, another problem that occurs in the free space propagation is the fading. Fading, we all understand the term even without technically also. It will result in the loss of the strength of a signal. Let us say when you are standing in a room and slowly you say something, some people may not be able to hear. You raise the volume, you shout, then some people will be able to hear. But then you can't shout beyond a point. So, for example, when there are certain teachers which I have seen which don't speak at a very large, but because even if they speak at a prominently large space, when the last bencher may not be able to hear them, because till that point the signal has not reached, or the signal has traveled the distance from the teacher to the last bench, but if you're sitting in a hall or auditorium, certain loss in the strength of the signal will take place, and that is what we say is a fading, the loss in the amplitude of the signal, and it cannot be transmitted as it is from the source to the destination. The signal requires certain help, then only it can successfully transmit or reach from the source to the destination. So fading is usually caused by the interference between two or more versions of the transmitted signal which arrive at the receiver at a slightly different times. So the mobile antenna is receiving the signal from the two nearest base stations and at slightly different times. So what we say, the garbling up or the interference will take place at the receiver of the mobile antenna. And these waves called multi-path waves because they're coming from multiple directions, traveling different paths, combine at the receiver antenna to give a resultant signal which can definitely vary both in terms of amplitude and the phase. Again, if you remember in the communication system, when we got analog signals, the cyclic signals, so number of cycles per second is what we say the frequency. And then we have the maximum gain of a signal, which we depict by amplitude from the time. We have got, we will discuss in CDMA, because we have got TDM and the FDM also, time division multiplexing, frequency division multiplexing. So we'll discuss about these signals there also. So here we are only talking of the amplitude and the phase. Now fading is used to describe the rapid fluctuation of the amplitude, the phase, and the multipath delays of the radio signal. Because if the signal transmission is taking place, definitely delay is bound to happen. The phase is depicted by phi. Amplitude, we all know, is the maximum strength of a signal. What in the positive polarity, we know how much voltage gain will be there as such. That will determine the amplitude of the signal. And when a signal is transmitted to a larger distance, there is a loss in the strength of the signal, loss in the amplitude of the signal. What we call it as a attenuation. So when a signal is transmitted long distances, then the attenuation problem will arise. And then we use the repeaters as a solution for these kind of the problems. So with a short period of time, all the travel distance, so the large scale path loss effect may be ignored. So multi-path delays of the radio signal is bound to occur when the signal, when the transmitter, when the receiver of the antenna, when the antenna of the receiver is going to receive the signal through the multiple paths. So these problems are bound to occur. Now multipath in a radio channel creates small scale fading effects. So there will be small scale fading effect and there are many number of them. So we'll discuss the important effects that comes in the small scale fading. First is definitely the rapid change in the signal strength, because it can go up and down, positive polarity or negative polarity when the transmission of the analog signal take place over a small travel distance or of the time interval. So we talk of the distance, travel distance is d, time interval is delta t. And the random frequency modulation that can happen due to the varying Doppler shift on a different multipath signal. Now, these random frequency modulation can occur due to the Doppler shift. We'll study the Doppler shift just after 2 slides. What is Doppler shift and how do we compute the Doppler shift in a free space propagation model? Now, some of the factors which influence the small scale fading. First is the propagation of the wave on the multiple path, and your handset, the receiver, the antenna of the receiver handset might receive the signal from the nearest base stations at the different point of time during the entire day process. The speed of the mobile, the speed of the surrounding objects. For example, if you are as a pedestrian, then you are not a problem in the cellular system. But if you are driving a car at a phenomenally high speed on a highway, then yes, the passengers, the driver of the car who is holding the mobile set, the speed of the surrounding object means speed of the vehicle. It's very fast. The transmitted bandwidth of the signal is another issue that may result in the fading effect. If you transmit a signal at a very low power, it may not be able to reach even at the edge of the signal. If you transmit a signal at a very high power, then yes, the signal may get overreach. It may just cross the boundary of the cell and reach to the next cell. So again, we need to have the proper ideal transmission power on a required bandwidth so the signal can be transmitted and all the subscriber in the cell can receive it. Now let's see the Doppler shift which we have just discussed. What is Doppler shift and how do we compute it? Consider a mobile moving at a constant velocity v1. So velocity of the mobile is constant and it is moving along a path segment having a length d and between the 2 points x and y, while it receives a signal from the remote source s. Now the difference in the path length traveled by the wave from the source S to the mobile at the point X and Y is, and now we need to compute it. So again I repeat the statement part. Consider a mobile is moving at a constant velocity v1 along a path segment having a length d between the points X and Y. So vehicle is moving or the mobile is moving between the points X and Y with a constant velocity v1 and distance between the two ends X and Y is d, and it receives a signal from the base station, the source S. Now the difference in the path length traveled by the wave from the source S to the mobile. Where is mobile? Mobile is between the point X and Y. At what speed it is moving? Constant velocity v1. And how do we compute that difference in the path length? We say delta L is equal to d times of cos theta. And we know speed equal to distance upon time. So we say v times of delta t cos theta. And what is the delta t is a time interval. So we say where delta t is the time required for the mobile to travel from x to y. Now it could be few seconds, few minutes, few hours. How much time depending on how you are moving. For example, even in a city when we are driving and we open the Google map, it identifies how we are moving. Either we are the pedestrian or we are moving on a two-wheeler or we are moving on a four-wheeler, because then only at that much speed and the rate it will show that how much time you are going to take to reach from that location to the destination. So it's very much required delta t. How much time is required for the mobile to travel from the particular location x to the destination y? And here the mobile is moving at a constant velocity v1. X and y are the source and the destination point. Now theta is assumed to be same at both the point x and y, since the source is assumed to be very far away. Now we really do not know how much far away, but it is considered that it is at a very far location from each other. And the phase change in the received signal due to the difference in the path length is therefore, and how do we compute it? The phase change in the received signal, that is given by Doppler shift, and is computed as 1 upon 2 pi into delta phi by delta t. Now where, what is delta phi? It is 2 pi by lambda into delta L. And delta L, we have already seen in the last slide, it is V times of delta t. So speed is equal to distance upon time. So delta L is equal to V times of delta t into cos theta. And 2 pi by lambda gets carried forward from the same place. So if I want to compute the Doppler shift in a free space propagation model, when the vehicle is moving from the location x to a location y at a constant velocity v1, and I've been given a task to compute the Doppler shift, I will write the user formula 1 upon 2 pi into delta phi by delta t. Now delta t is a time interval, time it will take for a mobile to reach from x to y. So if the value is given to you in the numerical, you directly take it as it is. If it has not been given to you, take a assumed value. Let us say 1 minute or 10 minutes or 1 hour. Simple. It all depends upon the way the numerical has been framed up. So what we compute delta phi, the phase, it is 2 pi delta L by lambda. And delta L is V times of delta t cos theta, which we have already seen in the last slide. How do we compute the value of the delta L? Now let's do another numerical. In a US digital cellular system, if the carrier frequency is being given to you as 900 megahertz and the mobile velocity is 70 km per hour. So carrier frequency, now when we talk of the carrier frequency, we talk of the modulation. It is as simple as that. We use carrier frequency only when we carry out the task of the modulations. And there are multiple kind of the modulation technique, again coming from the communication system subject. We have got analog to analog, analog to digital, digital to analog, and digital to digital. So here we have been given the carrier frequency as 900 megahertz and the mobile velocity has been given to as 70 km per hour. So the person who is driving a car is driving it at a speed of 70 kmph, and we are asked to calculate the received carrier frequency if the mobile is moving. Now there are three scenarios in which direction you are moving. Directly towards the transmitter, that is directly towards the base station. So if the vehicle is moving towards the base station, we call it as a positive Doppler effect. However, the vehicle can be moving away from the base station. And what is the speed of the vehicle? 70 kmph. Then we will call it as a negative Doppler effect. So directly away from the transmitter, when we call it as a negative Doppler effect. Or third could be in the direction perpendicular to the direction of the arrival of the transmitted signal. So these are three possible scenarios where when the vehicle is moving, and what we need to do, we will see what are the things given to us. The vehicle is given a speed of 70 kmph, 70 km per hour. So we can directly convert 70 into 1000, because 1 kilometer, 1000 meter. Deriving it the values in meter per second and dividing it by 3600. So it gives the values 19.44 meter per second. So when we apply it in the formula, we know vehicle speed is being given to us as 19.44 meter per second. We also carrier frequency is also given to us FC, which is 900 megahertz. Therefore, we can use the compute the wavelength, which we know was C by FC. C is the speed of light, 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second, and carrier frequency has been given to us 900 megahertz. So we say 900 into 10 to the power 6, and this will give us a wavelength as 0.33 meter. So we have now three values here. Vehicle speed in terms of meter per second is 19.44. Carrier frequency already given in the numerical, which is 900 megahertz, and the wavelength we have just computed, which comes out to be 0.33 meter. Now using these three values, we solve all the three cases A, B and C. when a vehicle is moving towards the transmitter, which is positive Doppler effect, when a vehicle is moving away from the transmitter, which is negative Doppler effect, and when the wave of arrival is perpendicular to the, let's see the exact statement, in a direction perpendicular to the direction of the arrival of the transmitted signal. So signal is getting transmitted from the base station. So in a direction perpendicular to the direction of the arrival of the transmitted signal. So these are three cases which we need, and values which have been given to us: vehicle speed we have just resolved in meter per second, carrier frequency already given to us, lambda we have just computed, speed of light divided by carrier frequency, which gives us 0.33 meter. Now let's look for the solution of A when the vehicle is moving towards the transmitter. So we call it as a positive Doppler effect. Now what will be the received frequency? We say Fc plus Fd, and carrier frequency is already given to us, 900 megahertz. So 900 into 10 to the power 6, and we compute the Fd frequency. So vehicle speed has been given to us. We have resolved it into a meter per second. So we say 19.44 divided by the wavelength, which is we have just computed in the previous slide, 0.33. Now this gives us a F as 900 megahertz. So this is a positive Doppler effect when a vehicle is moving towards a transmitter. So how do we compute it? Carrier frequency Fc plus Fd. And how do we compute the Fd? Vehicle velocity of the vehicle is already given to us, 70 km per hour. We resolved it into a meter per second, 19.44 meter per second divided by the wavelength, which we just computed in the previous slide, 0.33 meters. So we get the value of F as 900 megahertz. Now that's for the positive.
सर सेकंड वैल्यू तो बिल्कुल नेग्लिजिबल ही हुई,
Right.
इसलिए सेम 900 सेम रही.
Right. So when now we go to the second part, when the vehicle is moving away from the transmitter, the negative Doppler. So received carrier frequency, we say F is equal to Fc minus Fd. So we subtract the Fd. Fc is already given to us, 900 megahertz. So 900 10 to the power 6 minus the velocity of the vehicle, which was 70 km per hour, and resolved into a meter per second is 19.44 divided by the 0.33, which was the wavelength. And this gives also the value as 890, which is very close to the same which we received in the previous slide, 899 megahertz. So frequency is as computed as 899 megahertz in the negative Doppler effect. Now the third one, the perpendicular part, here it will be the same. So when the vehicle is moving perpendicular to the angle of arrival of the transmitted signal, in this case theta is equal to 90 degree and cos theta is equal to 0. So we'll presume that there is no Doppler shift, there is no Doppler effect. So we don't need to apply any formula or calculation like Fc plus Fd or Fc minus Fd or Fc into Fd. So since theta is equal to 90 degree, so we assume that the received signal frequency is same as the transmitted frequency of 900 megahertz. Now this we are computing at the recipient, at the receiver side. So the received signal frequency is same as the transmitted frequency on 900 megahertz. Now that computes the AMP system. If you require, we can take a break of 5 minutes or we can move on as it is. I don't have any problem. And we can start with the GSM architecture because that concludes the AMP system discussion. Advanced mobile phone system, that's the first system that came into US in the early 80s, and that also led the evolution of the many number of the cellular systems, because once the first system is there in place, first system takes time. So it took around 5 to 7 years to actually build up the AMP system. But once the AMP system was there, then the NTT, Docomo, many other cellular system came, CDMA, the GSM, because once you know the things, once the architecture is there in place, then the things become easy to actually build up. So first system always takes time. The example can be in any field, but thereafter the life become easy because the basics are now clear that how can the signal be transmitted as such. So let us take a break for 5 minutes and we'll start the class at 12:35 again. Okay.
Okay, sir.